There was a time before cable, when the local anchorman reigned supreme, when people believed everything they heard on TV. This was an age when only men were allowed to read the news. And in Huntington, one anchorman was more man than the rest. His name was Tim Irr. He was like a god walking amongst mere mortals. He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr and a suit so fine that made Sinatra look like a hobo. In other words, Tim Irr was the balls. I had the pleasure of speaking with the man, the myth, the legend.
Professionally, I would say that I'm proudest of uh, the fact that I don't feel like I've ever had to sell out per se for a story. I always feel like I could say, you know, if I had to walk away right now from the job, I could always say, well, I always, you know, did it the right way because I was always had, you know, Wayne Van Dyne, who I mentioned, was an influence early on, but I've had a lot of good teachers who I've been very fortunate to have been involved with, and a lot of good people I work with, and I would say that I'm just very proud of the fact that I haven't ever had to make a decision that is extremely questionable professionally, and have to live to regret that and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have. Haven't had to do that. So I'm very fortunate that I would say that I'm very proud of that, because there are a lot of different people you interview. People say, well, who's the most important person you've ever interviewed? You know, I think a lot of people are everybody. I could never say that, you know, the guy down on the street corner isn't as important as the presidential candidate that you interview, because you can learn different things from each interview subject. And there are some just spectacular, wonderful people I've interviewed who might not feel that they have very much power in this world, but they can be a tremendous influence. So, you know, I'm not going to say, well, my most proudest moment is when I interviewed at the time, Vice President Bush, you know, or at the time when I interviewed Bill Clinton, or, you know, very important people. And I am proud that I interviewed them, but I can't say that there's that one specific moment, because all of it kind of, you know, blends together for me. Yeah. So I'm very proud of the fact that I've never had that horrible hide your head in your hands moment that I'm ashamed of what I did for my job or anything like that. That hasn't happened. Somebody who's honest, somebody who does a good job, somebody who is good to the people I work with and is good to the people in the community. That's pretty much all you could ask for. That's really what I would strive for. As far as the whole, the consummate professional and all that kind of stuff, I don't really care. You know, awards and all that kind of, it just doesn't. I want to be remembered as somebody who did a good job, the best job that they possibly could, and never stomped on people to get ahead, because I don't believe in that at all. And somebody who really tries to do the best. And I'm not always going to succeed. I'm going to make mistakes, but maybe recognizing that I can make those mistakes and still, you know, hold my head high. That's kind of how I want to be remembered. An old boss of mine brought me here. I was in Pittsburgh and I was doing public relations and for a hospital in Pittsburgh, and I just wasn't as into the job as I should have been, and I knew it, and I wanted to get back into TV. And an old boss of mine ended from Clarksburg, West Virginia, went to Pittsburgh and Louisville and different areas. So I was in Pittsburgh, and he was calling me and asking me, would you like to apply for this job at Channel 13? He was the news director over at Channel 13 down the street. And at the time, it just wasn't right. And then he ended up as the news director here at Channel 3 at WSAZ. And his name was Ken Salvaggi. And he said, there's a Charleston news manager job open, and it'll give you a chance to report and write and fill in anchor and do all the things that you love to do, and taking a camera out and shooting and stuff like that. And he said, I'll give you a chance to do that again. Would you like to do it? And it was just too good to pass up, because I wasn't happy in my job. And so he brought me back here. I came down, interviewed for the job, and got the job. And that was, Our oldest daughter is a junior in college, so that makes her, she was 21, that was 18 years ago. It's always different.
Really?
There's nothing typical about it. Just the workday begins at 2:30 in the afternoon and usually ends at about midnight, sometimes later. It just depends on what we have to do, you know, adding stories to the web and different things like that. The job requires a lot. But I think that, you know, you just never know. Like I told you when we were talking about trying to schedule time for this interview, I said, I don't know. Remember what I said? I said, you know, if I go in and they're like, hey, we need you to go out, and I might have to go grab a camera and go shoot something. And that could happen at any time now. They could come in here in this door any second now and say, you'll never believe what just happened. You need to get a camera and go. And so that's really what I love about this job. There's never anything typical. Now, every day I'm pretty much assured that I'll be anchoring the 5:30 news, the 6 o'clock news, and the 11 o'clock news. You know, unless there's hell or high water. And in that case, then I might have to go cover the hell or high water live somewhere and do the news from there. But pretty much I'll be at this desk in this chair with this set at 5:30, 6, and 11. That's a constant. But what happens in the hours around that, never know. And that's what that's what I thrive on. Really, I love the fact that you never ever know what's going to happen. That's probably my ADHD in me, but it works out for me. It's a great business for that. Oh yeah, plenty. I have a lot of dreams about, you know, it's just continuing to see the evolution of this business is something that there have been a lot of changes in this business, not all for the good. There are warts in any industry you get into. I guarantee you could walk down the street to a bank on Fifth Avenue here in Huntington and ask somebody who's been in the business for 20 years or so, you know, hey, what do you think? Oh, let me tell you, son, banking business isn't what it used to be. You know, everybody's going to have those stories. So yes, I could have those stories. I could say, oh, you know, when I first got into it, it was a. So there are plenty of stories that I could say like that. But I think, you know, what would I like to see in the future? I'd like to see that this continues to be, despite its warts, something that we can be informative as an industry. I'd like to see, you know, and I'm not just talking about me personally, but I in order to stay in this business, I'd like to see it continue as something that really does mean something for the local community. Local news really can be a very informative source for people in that community. And I think there are times when we can really, you know, make a difference in people's lives because, you know, getting them that information that either is going to make them feel safe or get information to the family to help protect them, especially in storm kind of situations. That's mostly what the weather folks over there do. But we can all play a part in it, and I think, you know, getting that information to people and helping them make their lives better can really make a difference. And I'd always love to do, and I always look forward to doing stories that there was a young girl who she was 9 years old, and she witnessed the death of her uncle, and her family nominated her to be a WSAZ Hometown Hero for the Hometown Hero Award. And I went out to Beach Fork Lake where he drowned in front of her, and she would not come out of her shell. She was 10 years old at the time, so it was about a year later. And her family said they nominated her so maybe she could see this. So we did the story with her. She was very shy and small little tiny girl, even for her age. She went into the water. She and her uncle were fishing. He fell into the water at Beach Fork. She went into the water and got him out. He was drowning. He couldn't swim. She went in and got him out. Somehow, like, you know, the adrenaline kicked in. And here's this tiny little 9-year-old. He was big. He was a real big guy. They showed me pictures of him. And she got him out of the water and was calling up the hill for her relatives who were up at the campground to come down and help. And she was trying to do CPR as best she could at the age of 9. And it didn't work, and he died. And she kind of went into a shell, they said. So they wanted to give her this hero award. And I saw them about 2 or 3 months later. I saw the aunt of the girl who nominated her. And she said, you know, ever since she saw that story on TV that you put together, it changed her, and she came out of her shell. It really changed her. She said it really made a difference, and it made her realize that she did everything in her power to help her uncle that day. And they said, you really changed her life. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's the greatest. If I can get more stories like that really have an impact on people's lives, they're the ones you never forget. And I hope I get a lot more of those in the next, whatever, 20, 30 years I'm here. So. Write. You have to be able to write. If you can't write properly, you should probably find something else to do. It's the most important aspect of our job. The ones who come in, and when I say the ones, I mean the potential employees who are interns, it's so apparent right away that they get it because they can write well. And they have an idea. You have to be prepared to act quickly, and you have to be prepared to just work your butt off. So that's my advice, is to do it that way. There are so many characters in this business. Well, there are characters all through life, but the most interesting people, it's so difficult to say, because there are so many people who really are really interesting. When I first started here, I got to work with a guy that everybody knew. At the time, I just knew him as Jewel Huffman. But everybody was like, oh, that's Mr. Cartoon. And I didn't know it was Mr. Cartoon, but everybody talked about this Mr. Cartoon guy. I had just moved to Huntington. I didn't know who he was. And I quickly got to know who this guy was. And that was the first. He did weather. I did news when I first moved here. After I moved up from the Charleston news manager, a morning anchor job came up. I applied for that and got that. And I got to work with him. And he was really unique, and he was like this local legend. So that was really interesting to work with him. And ever since then, all these different people I work with, and I'm when I say that, really interesting. Bill Murray is just probably one of the best reporters you could find anywhere in the country, and I work with him every day. Just great people, really interesting people. The stories could just go on and on forever about the people I've worked with, and the people that you see in different areas and different places, and very interesting people. I've been very lucky because we have a really good group of people here at the station. There's a lot of unity. There's a lot of, it feels like a family. And I know that sounds schmaltzy, and people, oh, you don't really mean that. No, I really do. And that's maybe why I've stayed for this long, is because there's a really good feeling with the people who work here. I've never worked in a place where everybody gets along as well as they really do here. So that's a great thing.
Yeah. What would you say if someone were to compare you to a local Ron Burgundy?
I'll take it, because he had a great head of hair, and I don't. And so if I could be compared to Ron Burgundy anyway, and a great mustache, I'm not allowed to grow that out here. I don't think we do that unless I time travel back to the 70s. Although when I look through the analog of WSAZ. When I look through the history of it all, I don't see anybody with that Ron Burgundy mustache. So, yeah, stay classy, Huntington.